What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of season 2. Last time we defined the word speech, and this time we're going to be going further into depth with speech. I don't know.
Okay, cool. So we're going to continue. So I wanted to just really quick kind of go back a little bit with what we defined last week. And it was basically speaking to a conclusion, or speaking embodies a conception or an idea. And I feel like that's really, like, I think one of the other definitions we talked about, kind of like when you speak, you're really speaking your mind, your thoughts, who you are, like morally, what your values are, you know, what things you believe in. So I really feel like that's something that's really important for us to kind of look at. One of the things I was kind of looking at was they were doing a study on babies, like when they were first born, and they exposed one child to like speech noises, kind of. I think they talked about like just kind of certain words, and then the other group, they didn't expose that baby to anything. And one of the things that the studies found was that a baby, like within hours, can start to define or kind of start to hear like words.
It recognizes like
recognizes patterns and stuff like that. And so I was like, wow, that's really. And the one that didn't have any didn't. And then right away as well, it said that it's called cross-talking, I guess. The brain starts to communicate, you know, within certain areas in the brain. And the baby's only, you know, a few hours old. And it just shows you how important it is, you know, that, or just realizing that speech is such a big part of our lives. You know, we don't think about it. We do it every day and not really think about sometimes what we're saying or how we're saying it or what we're trying to communicate. And hopefully we can communicate with words.
I liked what Elisa said last time about how like your speech is pretty much like the symbol to everybody about who you are and what you believe. So it's not just words, you know, it's not just you saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, you know, like how you talk and the way you carry yourself and the words you use, you know, and everything that shows everybody who you are. That's the first way that people can recognize what kind of person you are. Yeah. And I like that a lot. Like it's a big part of our identity.
Yeah, and one of the other things because when I said that, it was from a forensic little study or whatever, how they're defining voice. And one of the other things that it also said was that when it comes to speech and talking, one of the things that we recognize right away when someone's talking to us or even writing something out, whatever it may be, the two things we recognize right away is what's actually being said and who's saying it. Because we take that in consideration as well. Because two people can say the exact same thing, and you'll take it from this person, but you won't take it from the other because you know who they are, or you're like, you're a liar, you know. Yeah. So that's just how we, you know, communicate. Yeah. And so obviously, if you don't take it from this person, that means obviously somewhere earlier in that relationship they said something or did something that made you view them a different way. Yeah. To where you think, oh, they're a bunch of liars, or just don't listen to what they gotta say. They're stupid or whatever.
Yeah, like, or even if you don't know them.
Yeah, that too.
You're not gonna take something from someone you don't know.
Yeah. Like, well, hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. Hey, well, sometimes people do though. Like, you know, one thing we were talking about earlier was just, I mean, everywhere. You know, in the news, at school, from a teacher, from a friend, on the radio. I mean, you're always hearing people speak, you know. How quickly do you receive it and say, I'm going to take that as true, you know, because sometimes we're really quick. And one of the things here it talked about was, you know, like you're when you're speaking, you know, you're coming to a conclusion, and hopefully when you're hearing somebody speak, you're kind of hopefully trying to see if what they're saying is valid, you know, if what they're saying is true. You know, one of the things that, you know, I always want to say too is that, you know, when we're here together talking, we're telling you truth. We're not just making up things. You know, we didn't make up the thing about speech. Like, we actually went and looked to see what it meant, what it meant in its definition, in its origins. You know, so that you could understand that, you know, we're telling you truth. And you can, anything that we say, you could probably go Google it or go in a dictionary and go look it up. You know, so that the things that we're saying, they're based on truth. We're not just saying whatever we feel like, you know, although sometimes we will have our opinions, but we always start off trying to define what we're talking about. And I think one of the things that's important kind of is, I kind of just wanted to look up a little bit what the freedom of speech was, because it's one of, you know, the rights that we have as U.S. citizens.
It's
is
one
that,
of our first rights.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Constitution, yeah.
Yeah, and you have that right to have your opinions. You have a right to believe what you want. You have a right, for the most part, to say what you want, and how, whether that means speaking through social media or whether it's reading a magazine, because that's, you know, people speak through the words that they say, or, you know, you want to listen. Like writing, yeah. So, you know, so we all have a right. We have a right to disagree. You know, I don't have to agree with your point of view. You don't have to agree with my point of view. You know, but there's a difference though as well. You know, that there's some things that are just true. You know, you don't have to like the truth. You know, you don't have to like, you know, some definitions that maybe that we have. You know, but they're still true. But you don't have to like them. You know, so I want people to kind of recognize that. You know, you can have an opinion about it. You know, and you can disagree with it, but it's still true.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
someone can tell me that I'm short and I can not like it, but it's true. I'm short, but I cannot like it. But just because I can argue all I want, but this still makes me short.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where people kind of get caught up sometimes. Like, even when they're speaking to each other, it's like, you know, this is a table. You know, you can say that it's not, and you can, you know, argue, but this is a table. That's the truth. You know, I can prove it. You know, there's, you know, we can go into scientific, you know, or we can go to the dictionary, but you don't have to like it. You know, and sometimes we're gonna talk stuff that maybe you don't like. You know, but for the most part, we're gonna try to keep it on that truth level, that it's something that you can, you know. But I felt like it was important for you guys to, you know, maybe you don't realize, but you have the, you know, the right to disagree with somebody, or to not agree with something that they believe in, or something that they think is, you know, important. You know, you don't have to agree with everything that you hear, you know, because I think you were saying earlier about somebody being the loudest.
So, you know, just because there's like a group of people and people are really loud or really, what's the word? Yeah, bold, or they're really like into what they're saying. Yeah, they're really vocal, passionate. That's the word. Yeah. If they're really passionate, that doesn't mean that they're always right. You know, like how you're talking about the table, like you have a whole group of people. Yeah, we're all going to agree, you know, that this table isn't, or that whole thing, like, you know, 2 + 2 isn't 4, you know, there's that group, but like truth is truth, right? So 2 + 2 is 4. But, you know, yeah, but just because like a whole group is loud, or the group grows bigger and bigger because they're loud, that doesn't mean that they're correct. You know, that doesn't mean you have to follow them. And if you have an opinion that they're wrong and you've researched it and you see that they are wrong, you know, that probably means that they're wrong if you looked into depth about it, you know. But just because someone's loud, that doesn't mean that they're always right. Yeah. And just because you feel like kind of an outcast, that doesn't mean that you're wrong in that. Because everyone's loud, you know.
Anyone can be loud about anything.
Yeah. You know, and there's been times too where I feel like, you know, I shouldn't argue with someone because they really don't care about truth. Yeah, or they don't like the truth, so they're going to continue to not agree with it, you know, or and try to find stuff in their own, you know, and argue it. And sometimes it's better to just pull back, you know, and I'm not going to argue with that.
Not waste your breath.
Yeah. You know, because you've researched, you've done what you need to, and you know that what you know is true.
I think it goes along with that study that they did, where they had a group of people. They showed them like 2 lines, and one was obviously longer than the other one. One was long and one was short. But they had a group of people that went in there. They specifically told them, say that the short one is long. And then they had another group of people that went in, and they're the real, you know, the real subjects, I guess. And so basically, all the people that were told to say that the short one was long were saying the short one is long. And all the other people say, well, no, the long one is long. But because of the pressure of just the group, those people, even though they knew the long one was long, still said that it was not, that it was, that the short one was actually long. Even though they could see that it was obvious, you know, and I think that's how sometimes it is. Even though you might think to yourself, you know, that's not right. But because everybody else is saying it's okay, you're like, well, you know, but only because of that pressure.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's
the
like
whole peer pressure.
yeah,
thing.
like when you're like in the classroom for the first time and you don't really know anybody yet, and the teacher asks a question and everybody's like, "Yeah, I know the answer." You're like, "I don't know the answer, but I don't want to be the only one with my hand not raised up, so you know, I'm gonna raise my hand." But then what happens is that you end up kind of looking foolish because if the teacher calls on you and you don't know the answer, you're like, "What? I don't know."
Well, I was in a college class for, I don't know, it was like math something. But I was in this group project and they wanted to get it done so fast that everyone just agreed, because we were in this big group, and everyone just agreed that this answer was right. And I was like, that answer is so wrong. You know, and me and this other girl were like, you know, and she's like, well, should we tell? And I was like, I'm not going to get that answer wrong for them. You know, and so me and her continued work because they wanted to just leave, because once we were done with whatever group thing we were doing, they could leave. So me and that girl actually stayed behind, and we were like comparing answers, and we're like it was like a good amount of people were like, they're like so wrong, but they just all agreed, you know. And so we went back and we worked on the problem and on our own, and then we looked back at each other's answers and we were right, and we turned it in, and we're like, we know we were in this group, but I don't think their answer was right and we don't want to get it wrong. So then my math teacher, she gave us 100 separately, you know, and then they all had a lower grade because they just wanted to get out. Yeah. But like, if I was just like, oh, I'm gonna leave, you know.
Yeah, because I want to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big thing too, with like with speech. Sometimes it's hard or it's scary to say the right thing, or to do the right thing, because everybody's like, well, I don't want to stay, you know, or whatever, you know, or you're gonna be made fun of because you're gonna say something different from everybody else, and like it's like crazy. Like, you'd rather be wrong than be like rejected, I guess, almost.
I guess be wrong and accepted than be right and rejected.
Yeah, because we all got our papers back, so they saw that we got a different grade even though we were in the same group. So you kind of like risk that ridicule, like, well, what the heck.
Yeah, and I guess that's like a big thing in society today. A lot of people don't want to be, like we said, like rejected or outcast or not popular for whatever in whatever group you're in. So you'd rather just kind of stick within. And it goes back to speech. Like, speech is supposed to be what you think, your ideas, your beliefs. But if you're agreeing with everybody else, then you're no longer speaking your truth. You're speaking everybody else's. You know, you're not speaking the truth. You're speaking their truth. But if they're wrong, then it's not truth.
Yeah, even with like profanity, that's like a big thing. It's like, especially like among young people, it's like if you don't curse, there's something wrong with you. You know, and it's like, well, why is that? You know, like, why would you think that there's something wrong with you if you don't, you know, every other word's not a curse word, you know? It's like, you know, profanity doesn't take a whole lot of thought, or, you know, like, and I think we touched a little bit last week on that, you know, like, just, you know, like, I'm not saying to go and find ways to insult people, you know, but even like insulting people nowadays, you know, you just go off and you just say one word, and, you know, it's like, you know, really, you know, like, you're gonna,
Well, no, like, not even that. Sometimes what happens is if you disagree, they just insult you. There's no back and forth, because sometimes, like, the best way to figure things out is to go back and forth with somebody, because you're supposed to, like you said at the beginning, to come to a conclusion, a solution to something. But sometimes when people disagree, they just like, well, I'm gonna cuss you out, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say that, but nothing's
resolved.
Nothing. Yeah, they're not saying anything. Nothing's resolved. There's no solution. You're just arguing. You're just yelling, like you said, like, when you're just loud. But that's it.
Well, to be intimidating too.
Yeah, intimidating.
Yeah. And I think that's what helps you. Like, if you know what you believe and why you believe it, why you value it, you can defend it, you know, versus just grasping or just hearing what somebody else, because a lot of people, why I see a lot of young people, they just gravitate to what's popular, to whatever sounds good at the moment, but yet you never research it, you never actually look into, well, I wonder if that's true, or I wonder if that really holds any water, I wonder if they can actually back that up with proof, other than just saying, oh, well, I feel, or it sounds good, or I agree with that, but yet you don't even really know why you agree with it, or what's the long terms, like, if I really, could I really live my life, according to this value or whatever. And I think you said something about, I know we kind of went over it, but about like the freedom of speech.
Yeah, like that's why freedom of speech is very important, to like just getting it in your brain that it's okay to disagree with people, and why it's very important, because if you don't have that freedom to disagree with somebody and they just start yelling at you, what it is, it's almost like trying to control your speech. And when you control someone's speech, if someone doesn't allow you to say something, if someone doesn't allow you to disagree, or to not agree with whatever they're saying, they're trying to control what you think and what you do. And so therefore you don't learn anything, because you're just stuck in that little tunnel of yours, I guess. And I guess the way I was able to understand it was like, it would be like you're blind and all your friends are blind, and you guys agree that there's no such thing as stars. And of course you're going to agree that, because that's all you've ever known. You're blind. All you've seen is black. That's all you've seen, So of course you guys are all going to agree. But then if someone comes along and tries to explain to you that there's such thing as stars, and tries to show it to you and everything, but then it'd be kind of foolish for you to just start getting all mad, no, whatever. But like, it's understandable why you would think that, but that's why the freedom of speech is very important, because then it allows you to learn. It allows you to learn a different perspective from someone else, to understand why they think that way, to understand why they believe that. And as a blind person, I could still disagree that there's a star, And like, I guess.
But now you know that there's somebody else out there that they don't believe the same thing.
Yeah. And then especially if they start going into detail, backing it up with fact or whatever, because there's one thing to say as, oh, there's a star, but then to try explain it to me, to what it looks like and the science of it all, and I'm not the only one who believes this, and they bring their friends along who also believe it, then you can start, realizing
maybe this is true.
And realizing that my thoughts is not the only thought out there, that my perspective isn't the only perspective out there, that there's other people who live different lives, who grew up a different way, who think a different way, who do things differently, and it's important to realize that that your world is not your own world, I guess.
And then one of the last things I think was, were you going to say something? No? Oh, okay. Sorry. Sorry. One of the last thing was, I was taking a college course, and it was on religion. And I remember we're just, we're reading about different religions. We're reading these books, And my professor asked a question. She's like, who can make a narrative? And because I was like in that college mindset, I'm thinking, well, someone that's educated, a professor, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, anybody can write a narrative, but just because of the mindset that I was in, I'm thinking, okay, well, only educated, but that's not true, anybody. And a narrative can be anything, something that you write, something that you speak, and the one thing that we've said again and again is that, if you're uneducated, you can write a narrative. If you have, you can write a narrative about anything. You can write a narrative about sugar. You can write a narrative about, anything. And that's the thing that you kind of have to think about, though, and be careful, is that you're going to hear all kinds of people talk about all kinds of things and have all kinds of views. But again, you got to test it. Does it hold any weight? Does it really have any value? And I think that's what you have to think about is, you're hearing somebody else's thoughts, but are they like really valid? Some of the things that you hear people say is like,
and where did they get it from?
Yeah. Where did it start? And just so many different things. And one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier was who talks more. or who has, and who said, I forgot.
Women speak about 20,000 words per day, and men speak about 7,000. So
if you're a girl listening, you've got a lot of words out there, so you gotta make sure you know what kind of a narrative, what kind of story you're giving out.
Yeah, and that's based on fact. I mean, you can look at a lot of studies, and you can look at a lot of studies that talk about that's true. You know what I mean? And so we're telling you something that's true. So make sure that whatever you're listening to, or whatever even that you're saying, is it based on your opinions? Is it based on facts? Is it based on truth? Or, and what's it doing? What are you trying to communicate? Are you doing it like to entertain people, like what you said?
Yeah, like the 4 types of speech: to inform, to instruct, to entertain, and to persuade.
Yeah. And then even when you're speaking to yourself too, like what kind of story, what kind of narrative are you telling yourself? Mm-hmm. Is it truth? Is it just your own opinions about yourself, or is it like real, like hard truths about yourself? Because we talked about in another episode about,
and it's easy to lie to ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I'm doing the right thing
To justify, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just yeah.
We all agree.
Well, even just like bouncing off about like about women speaking like 20,000 words a day. Like there's a study that I guess like baby girls tend to use more verbal sounds than baby boys do, and then it leads into like the having a larger vocabulary, that women have a larger vocabulary. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. We use our brains more, I guess,
Yeah.
in different ways.
and not that you can't, upgrade. Just gonna hear vocabulary.
So we're going to be probably done with this, and hopefully next week we'll start talking about kind of maybe things that we can use, good ways that we can use, and maybe even negative ways that, other people spoke to us, our parents or friends, teachers, same thing, same places, social media, that's a big thing, and even texting, that's a form of speech. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that stuff next week. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.